Hello. Welcome. Good morning. Everyone's popping in. Thank you for letting me see your beautiful faces this morning. It's always more fun than talking to black screens. All right, I hope you have your workbook or your homeschool lesson planner. And we are gonna get started. Welcome to our Planning Your Homeschool Year workshop. Today, both Stephanie and I are going to kind of tag team teach and really just guide you through some of the steps that we use to plan our homeschool year, and hope that it encourages you and gives you some really great tips and things that you can apply to your own homeschool planning. Now, if you're like me, you probably know that we're not going to get through the entirety of our, nitty gritty of our homeschool year in the next hour or hour and a half. But what we're going to do is lay the foundation, we're going to talk first about setting your focus for the year. You have a page in your workbook for each of these things: setting your focus for the year, looking at your calendar, then setting your family goals, choosing curriculum, and then we'll go into monthly planning and weekly planning and just break it down. Now, I am still 2-3 years into homeschooling, and I am still trying to figure out the exact way that I like to do stuff. So I'm going to share what I do, but Stephanie is a seasoned homeschool mom, and she, when we were talking about planning all of this stuff for you guys, she was like, oh, and then we could talk about this and we could do this. And I was like, I think you have to teach with me because you're so good at this. So I'm excited to hear from her. I'm excited for her to be able to share with you guys. So are we ready? Are we ready to dive in? I don't think anyone else is in the waiting room. We are good. Okay. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. If I'm talking, Stephanie will try and answer things in the chat. If Stephanie's talking, I will try and answer things in the chat. And then we'll have a Q&A time at the end where we can just talk with each other, share ideas. We'd love to hear from you guys. And as we're working through some of these things, we'll ask you to share in the chat box what what you're coming up with. So we're not going to use slides today because we wanted to be able to actually show you some things, which is hard to do when the picture is tiny down at the bottom. So we're going to walk through the workbook, and that will kind of be your slides. Not really, but you understand, that will be the kind of the structure of today. And then as we're going, we'll stop and show you in our own homeschool planner how we've done it or what it looks like and that kind of thing. All right. Welcome. I don't even think I introduced myself. My name is Casey Pratt. I run Anchored Women. Stephanie is on my team. She runs our community aspect, our community, all the community stuff. She runs our groups. She does customer service, and she is fantastic. So she's a homeschooling mom. I'm a homeschooling mom. And today we're going to plan our year together. I'm so excited. I have literally been waiting for this day. So, all right. We're going to start with the very first page, which is setting your focus. So if you're using your workbook, you're going to be right here in this page. If you're using your planner, your homeschool lesson planner, you're going to turn to the very beginning where your school's name is, your values, your mission, and your focus. Okay, that's what we're going to be working through right now. So the first step before we even get started, take a deep breath, let the last year go for a little bit, because we are going to talk about last year a little bit, but get excited for the new year ahead. This is kind of like the fun planning time, right? Like if you're a homeschool mom, this is the time where you're like, oh, yay, all the new things we could possibly do, when you have all these big ideas that sometimes work out and sometimes don't, but that's fine. So we're going to get into the fun part. So what I want us to start with is going back to why we homeschool and what's the most important thing for our family. I worked on this part last night myself, and it was so inspiring for me, because I think it's been a few years since I've come back and done these first 2 pages. I often skip over them myself, which is not, do what I say, not what I do, right? So we want to start by listing out our values. What do you value as a family when it comes to your children's education, when it comes to the way your family spends time together, when it comes to the things that you want to focus on? What do you value? This listing out of our values is going to give us the big picture view for the year, really for our homeschool, season in general, right? The time that we're educating our kids. What are the things that we value? Some people are going to value, efficient academics so that they can focus on their kids being in club sports or drama or theater, or like the extracurricular activities are why the homeschooling is happening. Some people are going to be homeschooling because they want to focus on the faith aspect and building that into every step of their kids' lives. And so what I want you to do is write out, for just a couple minutes, write out what your values are. Like brain dump it. It does not have to be, you don't have to like narrow it down to your, top 5 or anything right now. Right now, we're just getting our thoughts out on paper. So think about, what are the values for you and your family? And as we're doing that, I'll just share mine with you, which I have done this before, but not when my kids are this age. And so my values have changed quite a bit, because, as your kids get older and their needs change, what you want your school to look like, that is going to change too. So, I narrowed it down to 5 for myself. You don't have to pick a number. Yes, this would be great to jot down in your handout or in the planner on the values space. We're just listing out our values to start. What is important to us and our family? So mine are faith, which I just wrote a little like definition next to each one. Faith, which is anchoring all we do, teach, and learn to the one true God. Initiative, becoming self-motivated and quick to jump in to meet an observed need. And then my last 3 are like the things I want to cultivate in my kids: a love for learning, a love for reading, and a love for music. These are the things that are really important in our family. And often, like, these are the important things that we want to include in our homeschooling, that we want to structure our school plans around. So writing out these values just helps you kind of get a clear picture of, okay, what is the big picture that's important to our family? I would love to hear from you guys. Share some of your own values in the comments. I value too much, Jen. No, you don't. It's okay. It's okay. I could have written down 16 other things here too. But right now, just write down anything that comes to mind. And then later you can go back and kind of refine it if you want. This too can be a long list of things, because that is what you value. But then when we get to our focus in a few minutes, that's where we're going to hone in on what are we going to focus on just this year. I can never make my brainstorming sound refined. Well, you're not supposed to. Brainstorming is just like dumping it all. Kelly, helping each child find their calling and preparing them for it. Oh, I love that. Yes, I love that. Dawn, read aloud, family devotions. Oh no, you're all talking at once. Now I can't see. That's great. No, keep talking. Family devotions, memorization, a healthy life, fun learning, faith, a love for learning, valuing each other. Ooh, loving each other as God loves us. That's a good one. Stewarding our energy and resources intentionally. Nice. I love sharing these with everybody because sometimes like we know what we value, but it's hard to put it into words, right? Sometimes. And so seeing what other people share can also kind of spark something for us. I love that. Okay. All right. So once you have your values done, then we're going to boil those down into your mission. And the mission is really focused like it's just a statement that says why we're homeschooling, what is most important to us. And that is something that we can come back to over and over again, especially on those days where you're like, is the public school still accepting enrollment? Because we're going crazy over here, right? Like, so we want to have that mission written down and come back to it so that we can remind ourselves why we're doing this. So you can do this a lot of different ways. You can write it out as one single statement. You can kind of put it together as a big paragraph. I wrote a big paragraph because I'm very long-winded. So, but I kind of just kept writing until it really encompassed what I wanted it to say. So I took the values that I had narrowed it down to, which were faith, initiative, a love for learning, a love for reading, and a love for music. And whoops, here we go. And I wrote out, I will just share my example. It is not like a template for you, but just to give you a jumping off point, right? So I wrote, our family school exists to grow faith-filled, responsible adults who take initiative in all circumstances. Our goal is to foster a love of learning, reading, and music, anchoring each child in Christ first. In this way, we hope to launch wise, empathetic, confident Christ followers into a world desperate for truth, knowing their salvation is sure and freeing them up to use their gifts and talents to serve the Lord with joy. So a little bit of what someone said earlier about having them find their calling and prepare them for it. That's kind of the way that I ended that. But obviously for us, faith is a huge part of everything that we do. And I want that to be the foundation of having my kids schooled at home so that we can talk about those things on a regular basis. That's really important to us. It might be very different for you, and that's fine. What is the most important value for your family? That's what you want to dive into here. So think about, how do you take maybe that list of values and translate it into a few, 1 to 5 sentences that really aren't for anyone except you. They are to help you remember why you are doing this in the first place. And honestly, working through this sort of thing gets me really excited about the year, because when we remember why we're doing it, then we're kind of pumped up, right? Because we know that the why, the values, they're really important to us. And we wouldn't be doing this very hard job if it wasn't super important to us. So having that there, either in your notes or at the front of your lesson planner, is just really helpful to be able to go back to on a regular basis. Yeah, it is just like a vision statement, mission statement, vision statement. Why are you homeschooling in general? Why have you chosen this path for your family? What's important to you? So we started with those values, and then we're boiling it down into a mission statement. Okay. If anyone I don't expect you to have it already done right now, but if you want to share anything about that, I would love to see it. I love hearing your ideas. I'm going to go back to values. Jen, having time and using the time to go deep on all the topics. I like that. Time to play and be outside. Yes. So many. Isn't it cool that we can all, like, we're all doing this for so many different reasons, really. And we have different values, but that is the most amazing part, is that you get to instill those values in your kids. And that's a huge bonus for homeschooling, I think. All right. When we narrow it down, we've narrowed it down from just a list of values to a mission statement. And again, like, this took me probably an hour to do last night, like sitting quietly with some music playing. So don't feel pressure to get this done today, but take some notes on your page, on your workbook page like this. Make sure that you are, giving yourself the tools that you need so that later you can go back and really give it the time and attention that you want to give it. Okay. But no pressure right now to get it done. Oh, Becky, I love that. Give our kids a solid foundation for faith and life and equip them to serve God and others in whatever He calls them to. That is excellent. I love that. It makes me think I really need to make mine shorter. Mine's too long. That's really good and clear. Very good. Okay, so we're going to go even a little bit more narrowed in and just set our focus for the year. Nope, I'm going to pause because look, you guys already shared some more. Shane says to have a safe environment in which to academically progress, enjoy creative freedom. That's a big one for us too. Flexibility and freedom of faith based on learning. Something like that. And my name is Heather, not Shane. Sorry, Heather. Okay. Shane is my husband. I don't know how to change that. We just had that discussion this morning as a team. How do we change our name on here? We didn't know. I didn't know either. I know Allison knows because she's my Zoom master, but I don't know how to do that. Although I will say that the other day, my daughter figured out how to do that. So clearly my kids need to teach me tech in homeschool. I will not be sharing that value with them. Okay. Dawn said that our family will love to read the great books, have a sense of wonder about who God is, who they are as image bearers, and the beauty of creation, discerning truth through the grit of scripture so they can spin words thoughtfully, bless others, and glorify God. That's really beautiful. Wow. Oh, look, Karen and Angie gave us instructions on how to change our names. Thank you. Okay, good job. All right. Okay. So let's focus in on our focus for this year. So we've done the values that we value all the time, right? Our mission statement for why we're homeschooling. And now we want to focus in on just this year. We go big picture to like detailed overview. Okay. Your zoomed in view for just this year. So the question that I want you to ask yourself is, what is most important right now? And what will you make happen this year? Now, this is where I want you to think about how last year went. Okay. What really went well last year? What do you feel like you covered or learned in a way that was, really successful, that you felt good about, whatever success looks like for you in this area? But I also want you to think about, okay, what do my kids need going into this year? What do we need as a family going into this year? Is our schedule really busy? Do I need to focus on relationship? Do I have a couple things that we really want to cover academically? Am I trying to foster a love for reading or for learning or for something else? Do I really want to focus on like life skills this year and make sure that my kids dive into, they leave my house knowing how to do laundry and dishes and all that kind of thing? So what I did, and Stephanie, you might want to share what you have done too, but what I did this year is I looked at my list of values And I focused in on 3 of them, just 3 of them that I really wanted to make a priority this year. And so for my family focus, I just wrote the 3 values: faith, initiative, and reading. These are the things that I really want to focus on this year. And so number 1, start each day in God's word and talk about it as often as possible. That's that faith component. Number 2, build a habit of daily chores and life skill development. This is really important for our family this year, especially with both parents working. Like, my kids have to learn how to participate and take care of their own stuff and be part of the family and the chores and the house management and that sort of thing. And then number 3 is reading. We want to learn through reading this year. I want to read together. I want my kids to start building personal libraries, and I want to read for fun. Both of my kids can read well now, and I really want to, I love to read and my kids love to read, but we don't actually do a lot of reading. Like we read in the past, we've read textbooks and we have read like one book a day, at a time or whatever. But I just feel like this year I want to learn through reading. So I'm trying to choose living books to go along with our classical conversations curriculum. I want to encourage the kids to start building their own libraries. Like I feel like this is the year that I really want to cultivate that love for reading in my kids. So Dawn, I love the idea of creating their own libraries. Okay, I heard that from Sarah McKenzie, Read Aloud Revival. She talked about her kids starting to create their own libraries in their rooms, and how proud they are of the books that they collect, and having their own, these are my favorites in their space. And I really loved that idea. So I want to replicate that, although I don't have room for a bookshelf in either one of my kids' rooms. So we're going to have to be creative, but it's fine. We'll figure it out. Stephanie, I know that we didn't plan for you to share your focus, but do you do it a different way than choosing just a few values to focus on?
Figure out how to unmute myself.
I know.
So I kind of let my values inform what my focus is. So I don't necessarily focus on a particular value, but so some of the things that I put, so my family focus is actually, you can see the most sparsely populated of my area, because I try to keep my focuses broad. Like, I'm charting a course, I'm not drawing a line, I'm we're moving in a general direction. So what I have for my family focus this year is work consistently towards mastery and skill areas and focus on weak subjects. So in the past, we've done a lot of really rich literature studies and really focused on hands-on activities and art and all that, which is wonderful. And I feel like that was the right thing to do because my kids were younger. I have a 4th-ish, 5th-ish grader. I don't know what grade she's in the middle, but she's getting older to where some of those skill areas are becoming a lot more important, and also to where I can see where some of those need to be refined. It's just clear now, because now that everyone's reading, now that everyone's adding, I can actually see where the deficiencies. One of my focuses is for her just to focus on some weak areas, and also my second going to be 3rd grader. Experience, right? I didn't realize this when my oldest was this age, but now I can, see this for her. I can see some weak areas developing. So I want to just kind of shore those up, as we go. And then my second, so it's kind of two prongs. So that's my first kind of wing. And then my second wing is to dive into good books to learn about ancient history. So that's going to be our focus kind of theme for this next year's ancient history. And so I think it's amazing the connections a lot of times that you'll find that you didn't even look for or know they were there. Something will pop up on TV that maybe it was going to be there anyway, but because your kids are thinking that way, they'll sit and that'll be hey, that's this thing that we're studying. So I think just to have that awareness, that's like what I want my kids to be thinking about. And I just wrote in the bottom here some things that I want to be mindful of as I pick my curriculum and as I plan my year, is that I'm going to have 3 learners for the first time, and like actually learning. So that's, I have a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, and a whatever. And then that I'm going to have a new reader. So I'm teaching, that's more intensive than that takes more time. It's just her language arts is going to take a chunk because teaching kids to read just takes a chunk of time. So I need to be mindful of that when I'm picking my other kids' stuff, that maybe they need to have more independent work. And so that was my 3rd point, is encourage more independent work. So those are like the things that I want to keep in mind as I'm planning my year moving forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we had very different takes on that. So I hope that's helpful for you guys to understand, like, this is really flexible. You can absolutely apply this to your own family and your own values, however is best for you guys and what you want to focus on. As the homeschooling mom, you know your kids and your family the best. And so we just want to encourage you in this section to just take a little time to lay that foundation and kind of like Stephanie said, chart your course for the year so that you aren't just like flying by the seat of your pants all the time. You know, this is really what we want to do this year, and we're going to try our best, Lord willing, to make it happen. All right. Anyone want to share their family focus for the year in the comments? Karen says, we really need to work on consistency, realistic scheduling, and actually following through. Karen, are we buddies? Because that's me too. 100%. I'm really working on that this year. In fact, my summer has been slightly miserable, but that's because I'm trying to get all of my, like, as much work for my job done throughout the summer so that during the school year, I can be consistent and actually like be more of a present homeschool mom than, hey, let's do our school in the morning so mom can work in the afternoon while you guys just play. Okay. Jen said, I had a baby in early 2021. So last school year was just a bunch of grace. Yep. Only getting through chapter 3 in math. That's okay. You pick up with chapter 4. Look, you're already so far in. That's the way it works, right? We restarted homeschooling in January after my kids did private school for a semester. And so we're halfway through the math curriculum. Like we're never going to be on the beginning of the math curriculum at the beginning of the year ever again, basically. So, oh, well. Okay, Angie. Hi, friend. I always said I need open and go curriculum because I didn't like planning. Last year, I planned the most I ever have, and we actually got the most done. Oh, my dad. My dad always calls me during conferences, Zoom calls. I'm turning it on airplane mode. I should have done that already. Yes, Angie, that is kind of what I'm thinking this year too. Like I'm trying to plan as much as I can down to the weeks. Angie is my real life friend. And and she knows last year, like we stumbled into it in January and I was like, okay, what's the next thing? And we just like flew by the seat of our pants and it kind of made me a little bit crazy. So this year I really am trying to get as much planning done, just like you're talking about, because I think we'll be able to get more done that way if I know exactly where we're supposed to be throughout the year. Stephanie, we left art by the wayside last year, so I want to keep our foundation subjects, art, and we need to begin Spanish for both my children this year. Awesome. That's fantastic. Really cool. All right, I'm going to step aside and Stephanie is going to talk to us about looking at our calendars. So you'll want to go to this page right here. I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Stephanie.
Hello. Well, I just real quick, I wanted to share my mission statement, if that's okay. So my mission statement is to give my children a custom education tailored to their needs, mindful of their God-given talents and abilities, in order to equip them to be lifelong explorers and to be agents of flourishing, actively participating in God's redemptive mission in a broken world. And that was taken from my values too. And I usually, I redid it for the first time in 2 years. I didn't redo it last year. So doing it again last night was like, it was good for me too. I was like, oh yes, because these are things that I have in mind, but when you put them down, then you can really move towards them, right? They're not just kind of nebulous floating around like, yeah, we should do that. I want to do that. And then Angie mentioned about like starting to plan for the first couple of my homeschool. I've been homeschooling for 5 years. Yes, going on 6. Started when my daughter was 4, which was way too early, by the way, but I did. And she's going to be 10. So I, for the first several years, was like, I'm a type B person. Yes, I'm type B. I don't need to plan. I'm spontaneous. I live my life. Like, this is our learning, this is how we learn. But I realized that because I am so spontaneous and type B, I need to plan things because I have these amazing ideas. I mean, if I do say so myself, right? But I have these ideas, but then they don't ever get past that idea stage because then I forget them. We move on to something else. Life with kids is constantly moving, constantly changing. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago when I actually sat down and planned my homeschool year. And honestly, everything changed that year. I got sick, my daughter got really sick, like everyone got sick and everything got totally blown up. But I had a plan and I could come back to it and actually like it didn't get completely derailed. And so that it really saved us. And since then, I've been a huge proponent of planning and also realizing, and I think I was afraid that it was going to put me in a box, but just because you plan something, you can always change it. Like this is not, you're not, committing to this, you're not signing, this is not, you don't need to file an amendment to change it, right? You can change it at any time. And so I think that's really important, at least to get down, because sometimes you might not even know what you need to change unless you have a plan that's kind of laid down in the first place. So moving on to calendars. So we're going to go to this page. This is the mini calendars page. I like to use it kind of like a big picture overview. So dates that I know are not going to change, birthdays. Oh, I did change my daughter's birthday this year because it's 3 days apart from her sister's. But usually birthdays don't change. So birthdays, anything like that. Anniversaries, family days, family holidays. And I made myself a little key, if you can see there, where I just kind of put the highlighter color I used and what it signifies. This is really great too if you have something that you know that's not going to change. So like if you're part of a co-op, like Casey does classical conversations. So she probably gets that schedule ahead of time. Those dates aren't going to change. She can go through and mark those in. If you have a set beginning and end to your school year, those are things to put in. If you have family vacations that you know that you've already booked, those are good to put in. School breaks. If you do something like, there's Casey's. If you do something like Sabbath schooling, where you're on for 6 weeks and off for 1, this would be a good place to chart that out. Then from there, you can go to your yearly overview. So this is where I put things that are maybe a little more nebulous. Like I know they're going to kind of happen in that time, but I don't know what days that month. Like I know it's going to happen that month, but I don't know exactly what day it's going to happen. I put birthdays here as well, just so I don't forget them. Any kind of thing. So here you see, I put Methodist pumpkin patch because the Methodist church by our house always does a pumpkin patch in October. And I don't forget that. I want to make sure that that's something we plan to do. If you have like homeschool days, museums or anything in your area that do homeschool days, they usually release their calendars mid-August, a little before. That's a good time to write all that stuff down, just so you have it in a place. Anything that's a little too far ahead to be on your immediate calendar, but you still want to remember to do it. I also put on here, so moving to Houston, we're currently living in Monterrey, Mexico. So we'll probably be moving countries. It's kind of a big thing. I don't know the exact dates, but I kind of have an idea that, you know, August, September, I probably should be planning my homeschool year or my homeschool days a little more sparsely. That's important to remember. And then at the bottom here, these are things that I looked up. Days, June 1st is National Pen Pal Day, June 15th, Nature Photography Day, stuff like that, that I have found. You can look it up online. I had a calendar one year that I got at like the bargain bookstore that had, every day was like a fun holiday. And that's just fun. I use that in the morning with my kids when we're kind of doing our morning time. I'm like, hey, today is National Balloon Day. And I don't know, maybe they'll want to draw a picture of a balloon, or maybe that'll lead to a science experiment with balloons or something, right? I just like to make a note of that. And all of the reading days. And September 29th is National Coffee Day, which is a Hollywood event in our house. So that's calendar. Oh, so where we are in calendar, we're on yearly overview. I kind of skipped ahead a couple pages, depending on how you put your calendar together or your planner together, I mean. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Casey.
Okay, sorry, I was about to type something and then I'll just say it out loud. So if you have the homeschool planner, we are not going to go through every single page. We're going to touch on the main sections. So like Stephanie said, that calendar, like looking at your calendar for the year, can be done on that overview page and also the overview page. We also, especially if you have high schoolers, we also have this quarterly overview where you can kind of chart out what you're doing in each quarter, which works really well if you have students that take quarterly classes or even semester classes for junior high or high school type things where you might need to keep records. So you can get into the nitty gritty of that in that section as well. All right, we are going to skip ahead to the next big section, which is setting goals for your family. All right, this is my favorite part because it's really fun. I do it on my own and I do it with my kids. So for the kids, okay, so if you have the planner in our goal setting section, you can print out however many of these you want for each kid. Okay, so we have 6 different colors. You can have up to, I like to color code my kids. So Nathan is blue, like that navy color, and then Emily is the light pink. And so I printed out a spread for Nathan and a spread for Emily. So in this section, you can see for me, it's not all filled out. And that's because I go through some of it together or like by myself. And then I'm going to take it to my kids and go through it with them. And that is really what I want you to do as well. If you are planning on setting goals for your kids and for your family, especially as your kids are getting older, it's really fun to include them in this process and hear from them, because that also gives us a good idea of kind of where we want to go this year, aligning with our focus, but getting some of the things done. And we want our kids to take ownership of their schooling as well. And so having them weigh in on this kind of stuff is really helpful. So what I do is I start with 3 areas like myself on my own. So I start with, okay, what are my kids' strengths and what are we call them areas of growth. Where are the places where they need to grow, especially this year, that I can already see? What are the things that I know they're really good at that we want to continue to encourage? And so I write those things down. I left a little bit of room because I'll come back here with each of my kids and go over it with them together, because I want them to be able to also pick out their areas of growth and the things that they're strong in. I want them to see what I see and then be able to pick out some things themselves. This alone is helping us build some of that self-reflection and initiative into the development of our kids. So what are their biggest strengths and weaknesses? What areas do they need to grow in? And I leave personal goals blank for the kids because those are for them. They're personal goals. And then I do fill in some spiritual goals because that is my job as mom, right? Is to lead them in their faith right now. And so these are just some things that I want to do together. So for strengths, for Nathan, I wrote his strengths out. He's good at math, organization, decisiveness, music, and drawing. Areas of growth are slowing down and checking his work, pursuing excellence instead of completion. Anybody else have a boy like that? We need to start working on writing paragraphs and really just master our multiplication and division facts. And then for spiritual goals, I really just wrote out some things that I want to do with them this year. I want to work on, I want them to work on using their Bible notebook pages during Bible time. I want Nathan to start reading passages from the Bible aloud with us to also help his read aloud skills. And then I want to choose a book to read together with him. I want to read a book individually with each of my kids this year. As far as like a Bible-based book. But if you are in our membership, starting in September, we are switching to a new Bible study format, and it's going to work for you and your kids for homeschooling, which I'm really excited about. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to use our membership stuff for Bible. So then for personal goals, I'm going to wait and talk to my kids about this. Hey, buddy, what do you want to really work on this year? What's important to you? And then actually, before we go to personal goals, we'll probably start with hobbies and interests. What are you excited about this year? What do you want to learn about? What kinds of extracurricular activities are you interested in? Now, Nathan's going to tell me he wants to do basketball and taekwondo and baseball and 6 other things, but we're going to pick one, probably. And also, but I want him to write down or to talk with me, and I'll write down all of the things that he really is interested in and excited about, because that's part of the joy of homeschooling, right? Is that we get to dive into those things together. And then I want him to list out what books he wants to read. We have a massive home library. And so we literally stand in front of our bookshelves and say, hey, pick out 5 books. What do you want to start with this year? And we write them down here. You can do the same thing at the library. Pick out 5 books. Pick out 10 books, make a list, whatever. And then we'll come back and do personal goals. So I'll do that for him and for my daughter. And then on the other side of the page, we list out things by subject. These are more like specific academic and social goals, really. So down the side, I just wrote all the stuff that we kind of incorporate into our homeschooling day. Math, language, science, history, writing, classical conversations, friendships, hobbies, faith, and reading. And I'm going to talk with my kids and ask them, what do you want to do in each of these areas? What's one thing that you really want to do in history this year? What's one thing that you really want to do in CC this year? Do you want to make Memory Master? Let's talk about that. Do you want to start a new hobby? Are there certain friends that you want to invite over, or that we want to do park days with? What do you want for your year? And I think this is really important, because not only am I taking my kids' opinions into account when I'm planning our year, which I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and their opinions are very widely known anyway. So why don't I incorporate them into our planning? But also, I'm teaching my kids how to make plans for themselves. I'm holding their hand as we're doing it together right now. And in that way, I'm hoping that this equips them to naturally understand how to do this as they get older, not necessarily just for homeschooling, but in their jobs, in their families, in their work, all of that sort of thing. These are life skills, right? Learning how to reflect, see what's needed for ourselves and our family, and be able to create flexible goals that we want to hit moving forward. Okay, then I set goals for myself, and my husband sets goals for himself too. Now, I will show you very honestly, my page looks like this. My husband's page looks like this. So probably my husband is not like a writer or a planner by any stretch of the imagination. Probably we'll just talk about this together, John and I. We'll talk about, hey, what do you want the year to look like? What are the things you want to work on? What do you want us to work on as a family? That sort of thing. But for myself, I wrote these out in relation to homeschooling. In our normal planner, which I have there, I have like my personal and my work goals, right? But this is really homeschooling related. So I have it separated into the same 6 sections as the kids: strengths, areas of growth, personal goals, spiritual goals, hobbies and interests, and books to read. Okay. So my books to read is still blank because I don't know what I want to read this year yet. But for like, I wrote out my strengths. My areas of growth are checking math and language, grading my children's work. I am not good at that. I have got to do that this year. Morning time consistency, and then limiting distractions and staying present. This is something I've been working on all summer long. I've taken all of the TV watching apps off of my phone, social media off of my phone, and still I can find ways to distract myself from my children. And I just don't want that. I mean, sometimes I need a break, right? Sometimes we need a break, but I'm trying to be intentional about being with my kids and focused on them, and not with my kids with my earbuds in while I need them to repeat themselves because I was listening to a podcast while they were talking to me. Do you know what I mean? So these are my areas of growth for this year. Personal goals. I have personal goals. I have some spiritual goals. And then I wrote out hobbies and interests, things that I really want to explore a little more this year. I love to read. I just always write that down. I really want to finish out our photo books. It's embarrassing to me that I have 2 photo books for the entire time my children have been alive. That's it. They're all just on the computer. They do nothing. What? Why can't I print them out or make a book or something? So I'm going to work on that this year. And then I want to plan some fun outings with the kids, and I want to start cooking more in a way that is not just baking brownies every week, which I do love to do, but more for health and wellness. So setting these goals for yourself and having your husband kind of talk through these things too really is kind of fun. Okay. It depends on your husband's personality. It just does. But for you, it could be kind of fun because homeschooling does like get to be this second education for you, right? Like you get to focus on what your kids need to learn, but you also, it doesn't have to be completely separate from what you love and what you want them to learn about and how you want to incorporate the things that are important to you into your homeschool life. So spend a little time diving into these questions for yourself. Write these answers out. I listed them out for you in your worksheet, or you can do it right in the homeschool planner itself. So, okay, let me see if any comments. Add Rachel Stafford to your book list. I've read her book. She's pretty great. I like her hands-free mama stuff. That's Rachel Stafford, right? Jen says, I love gathering their interests because I can keep my eyes open for that one free try a class with a friend. Yeah. Or other opportunities to get them exposure throughout the year, even if we cannot commit to a whole program. Absolutely. I love that. Oh, Dawn, you're with me. You stopped at 2008 and you need to finish 2 baby books. Yes. Shutterfly had a sale this week on unlimited extra pages in a book. So I got 1 more book done. It was Nathan's baby book. He's 8. So poor guy. I had to put these aside for now because life schooling meant I had to set things aside for time. Oh, you're talking about your photo books. Yes. Okay. Kelly says, yes, I feel like I've learned more while homeschooling my kids than I did when I was in school myself. Me too. In fact, that's why we're switching to living books this year, because I read The Last Bookshop in London. Have you guys read that book? It like changed the way I viewed history because I felt like I learned more about World War II through that one fiction novel than I ever had in junior high or high school or college or whatever. Like it was so cool. Anyway, so now we're switching to living books for history, and I'm excited to read them with my kids and learn a little bit more about history that is more than I learned for my AP tests in high school and then promptly forgot. Okay. I'm new to homeschooling this year. Welcome. This year, homeschooling with my 5 and 7-year-old was inconsistent. And although they learned so much, at times I feel guilty that we didn't get to do everything that I wanted to do or where I thought they would be. Now, due to many issues, they'll be at a private school and my 5th and 11th grader will be at public school. Now that they will be at school, my goal is wanting to provide extra learning at home in their areas of growth, as well as continue to teach them spiritually and our values and being responsible. That's awesome. So you can very easily focus on, Bible time in the morning, reading books in the evening, that kind of thing. I love that. My son is 10 and has no baby book. Karen, what did I say? We should be good friends. Oh, Gina, you're reading Last Bookshop in London. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, Angie, it was called The Last Bookshop in London. You would like it. It's really good. Nothing beats living books. So living books are like fiction or even like nonfiction that bring history or science or whatever to life, where you're learning through story or through infographics or just a lot more exciting than a textbook. I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie because she actually is way better at living books than I am. Is that how you would describe them, Steph?
Yes, I think living books, kind of as opposed to textbooks, I think is kind of the way that it's generally kind of described, because yes, nonfiction books definitely can be living books as well. I think usually, like if they're nonfiction, a lot of times I'll have really inviting pictures or like lots of different facts about something. Poetry is definitely considered like living books, and fiction that is interesting and engaging and not dry, really kind of paints a picture of what it is that you're studying. And yes, living books are huge. I was semi-homeschooled. In high school, I did a university model where I went 2 days a week to school and then was homeschooled or did my own stuff. And it was very traditional, but that was a huge, and I mean, I was kind of revolutionary at the time. They used to love living books to teach about history, especially World War II. And I think I really developed not a love of war, obviously, but a love of that time period, and kind of knew a lot about it. And it made me more interested in finding out more about it just because that was the approach. So yes, I definitely love living books. And any curriculum that we use, if it doesn't have living books, I'll usually, or just, books, right? And you can tell, like, you don't have to be all like, is this a living book or not? I don't know. Like if it's bright and engaging and has a good story, is well written, and kind of ignites that spark, like, yes, it's a living book. It's fine. So speaking of curriculum, we're going to move into choosing curriculum. So now that you've done all that, now you're ready to choose curriculum. I feel like a lot of new homeschoolers, and I do this because it's so pretty and it's so shiny and it's so fun. And you're like, oh, we can do this year. You want to dive straight in at the curriculum step. But if you start on page 1, you're more likely to find curriculum that you stick with. And I'll talk about why that is. So now that we've done all that, we're going to take, I lost my notes up and they somehow got closed. That's okay. We're going to take all that and we're going to start researching curriculum. So researching curriculum is, I mean, you're probably already doing it. You've probably already done it, right? I'm guessing a lot of us, we start looking through websites, we get catalogs, we do all of this stuff. Like we're kind of never, I'm never not doing it, right? Especially now that the time that people plan, it used to be that really like right around this time, July, homeschool curriculum companies would start sending out their stuff. I got stuff in March this year. I mean, people are like, they're on it. And I feel like, especially now that there's so many new homeschoolers, that's one thing that we need to be more cautious about is homeschooling has now become an industry. It kind of has been for a while, but the pandemic really just pushed it into more of that kind of commercialization, which is not necessarily all negative, because that just means that more people, more things are available to more people, which is good. But it also means you have to be a little bit more discerning. When I first started a couple years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I could do a Google search and most of what came up was actual real homeschool curriculum that I could, like all about reading, Memoria Press, that kind of stuff. Now I can search homeschooling and I can go 5 or 6 pages without getting to some of those companies that I know are like actual homeschool companies, right? Because of all the fluff. So I would start local when you're researching. I would ask friends what they use. I would ask if you have a local homeschool group. That's a really good place to start. A friend. It doesn't mean that you have to use what they use, but one thing will kind of lead to another. And as you look up something else, it'll maybe touch on something, else that you like. Something else that I really like for homeschool curriculum research are blogs and YouTube videos. And blogs, when I first started homeschooling, they were like all the rage. Now it's more YouTube. Like I feel like a lot of people are on YouTube more than they were necessarily in blogs. And I like YouTube for a couple reasons. One, it's a little easier to find what you want. And when people mention things, then you can go to the Google search. So somebody is like, hey, whatever that is. And that gives you like a more specified place to start. And a lot of times YouTube videos are homeschool moms where sometimes their videos are sponsored, but often their homeschool moms pick people who they go with companies to be sponsored by that they believe in it. So I don't feel there's a little less, like there's still a little bit of that marketing, but it's a little bit less than what you would deal with otherwise. So, and then lastly, I would say if you have a homeschool convention near you, that might be a good thing to check out. But maybe be aware of what you want kind of ahead of time, because it's so easy to be in a homeschool convention, talking to the person and they're so good, they're so passionate about their curriculum or whatever product they have. And then you get home and you're like, did I really need this like 37 book compendium on dinosaurs for my preschooler? Maybe not, like it can be a little bit of a challenge to like be a little more restrained in a convention, like on the vendor hall. But if you kind of have an idea where you want to go, it can be helpful. And a lot of times, especially if you already know what curriculum you want to buy, sometimes at conventions, they have discounts and sales, and that's really helpful. So now that you kind of know what your curriculum was, so I'm going to pull mine out of my planner so they're easier to use. We're going to be using these curriculum sheets. This is what it looks like without anything on it. Yes, that's a really good point. You can look inside books in person. That makes a big difference. So we're going to be using these curriculum sheets. I like to use these a couple of different ways. The first way that I use them is while I'm doing my research. So as you're researching, a couple of curriculums are probably going to rise to the top. There's so many, but as you're researching, as you're watching videos, a couple things will be mentioned a couple times, or something that somebody really loves about a curriculum or will really resonate with you, or something that somebody really hates about a curriculum. This has happened to me multiple times where they're like, I just didn't like it. It was just way too open-ended. And I just didn't, I needed someone to tell me what to do. And I'm like, hey, I can work with open-ended. Let me look into that. So pros, cons, you know, it's like a book review, right? Sometimes what someone hates about a book is what makes you want to read that book. And so a couple of different programs, curriculums will probably rise to the top. So at that point, this is my sample for language arts. So at that point, you're probably going to want to write down what they are. So I wrote here my subject, language arts, and then I just put a couple of curriculums on here. So I have The Good and the Beautiful, Logic of English, master books, all about reading. And as I'm researching, I'm taking notes in this space. So, you know, is it faith-based or secular? Is it really structured? Is it, you know, so what are some things that I like about it? For The Good and the Beautiful, I have that it's beautiful. It really is. It's really pretty. Logic of English, I have that it's really thorough. I wrote OG for Orton Gilliam, because Logic of English is Orton Gilliam. That's like their philosophy of teaching reading, and same for All About Reading. All About Reading is faith neutral. I don't think that they prescribe to any particular faith denomination. Master books is faith-based. Like you're going to be writing scripture and stuff like that throughout your language arts study. So those are things that you might want to be aware of. Now, as I'm kind of working through them, I put a little C. This can be concern or it can be con. Con just sounds so negative, so I make it concern. Something about a curriculum that I'm like, this may or may not work for me, just off the top of my head. Now that I have this, I take it and I hold it up against all of this other work that we did. So I hold it up against my values. Is there anything in here that is going to contradict with my worldview? You know, is there anything in my values? Let me take a look. You know, faith modeled and lived out, safe environment, like it's language arts curriculum. Usually there's not going to be a whole lot, but depending, we probably don't have a lot of secular families here, but for secular families, sometimes faith-based curriculum might not work. Some secular families might decide that they can adapt it. Or if you are, you know, maybe not a mainstream denomination, or I don't know. There are some faith concerns that sometimes people have that they want to hold that up to the curriculum and see if that's an issue for you. So for me, that's not really going to cross anything off as I'm looking at my list. My values don't really, conflict in any way. Maybe I'm gonna cross off master books because one of my values is faith modeled and lived out. And so master books is a lot more hands-on. That's maybe not what I want to do. So I'm just going to cross that part out. So, okay, so now I've narrowed it down. Now I have 3. So I'm going to move on to my mission statement, family focus for the year, and kind of see if there's anything in that conflicts. Probably not in those areas, but as I'm looking at my family focus for the year, I'm seeing, I'm focusing on weak areas with several of my children, and I have a new reader. So if this is going to be for one of my older children that already knows how to read, do I need to take a look at how time consuming some of these are? So let me take a look. You know, Good and the Beautiful, open and go. Logic of English takes a long time and it has a lot of pieces. Similar with All About Reading, there's a lot of prep work involved. Doesn't take a lot when you're actually in the lessons, but the prep work is pretty substantial. Is that something that I want to do? I'm going to decide no. So now I have The Good and the Beautiful and Logic of English. So I've narrowed those 2 down. I have these 2. I'm going to look at my calendar. Da-da-da. I'm seeing that I'm changing countries in August. So something like the Logic of English that has literally 10 million pieces. It has like 1 million cards, a bunch of little tiles. There's a whiteboard. There's a bunch of stuff. It's amazing. I used it for my oldest and it really helped her learn to read, but it's very manipulative, which is exactly what some kids need. But is that going to be an issue is that something that I'm going to want to first have shipped here? Second, pack it up and like bring it with me back, all of that. So I have to keep that in mind. Then, but say I'm like, you know what, I'm not sure, it might be worth it. It might be worth it to really reinforce that. And I don't know. So I'm still kind of on the fence. I feel like that's where having your goals for the year is really going to clarify things. So like if all of that didn't kind of leave you with a clear winner, seeing what you really want to focus on and what your kids really want to focus on is going to maybe clarify that for you. So, say I'm looking at language arts for my oldest. I know Logic of English. She's a good reader, and I really do like the way that they present things. But at this point, that's not where her focus is going to be, right? My goal for her is to really shore up her math. And her goal for herself is, she wants to start a book club. And so maybe the time that instead of focusing all of that, I'm going to go with the good and the beautiful, because now we're in level 4 and it's independent. So now I'm just going to hand it to her and she can do it. And so that's going to take time off my plate to open more time to do something else. So you can kind of see how that really helps kind of manage the overwhelm, right? Because you start with all this stuff, but as you hold it up to all of the things that you value, you're more likely to end up with something that you can stick with. Because all of these are great curriculum, honestly. All of these are really good choices. But if I just go with the one that I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to pick that one because I just like it or whatever, without really going through why I think it's a good fit, I might get halfway through my year and be like, this is just not working. I don't have any time, to work on this other thing, or, and then I end up switching halfway through the year that I spent money and time. And I mean, if that happens to you, don't feel bad, because that happens to all of us. It has happened to me many a time. But now that I do things a little more this way, it happens to me less. One other thing that I want to point out is that every curriculum is not going to line up 100% with your everything, right? There's going to be some that are just not, it's just not going to be a fit for some, like an exact fit for some reason, or you might not find an exact fit in some area. And that's okay. The idea is that you're aware of what those challenges might be so that you're prepared to meet them and that you can modify as you go along. Or you might decide that, something is going to, like, I might decide that this curriculum that has a lot of pieces is worth it for me. And so I'm going to invest on the front end in like a really awesome storage solution that I have everything all right there and it's pick up and go and it can travel with us. At one point, you really start looking at curriculum, first grade, second. I mean, I think that depends a lot on you, right? I think that depends so much on your philosophy of homeschooling. On how confident you feel teaching things to your children without a curriculum. I'm going to be honest and say that this is my third child. I was like, I don't need a curriculum. I can teach her to read and it'll be fine. And I'm just going to get, letter magnets and, we're just going to do it. And that lasted 2 weeks. And I realized that especially because I have other children, I need a book to tell me the next correct indicated thing because I don't have the mental energy to think about it. So I think when you pick a curriculum is really up to you. And also too, one of my values is agency. And that is, I apply that in 2 ways. One, my children are born persons, right? So that's the whole Charlotte Mason thing. Like my kids have their own agency. That's why we ask them about what they like and what they do and what don't want to do. But second, we have agency as homeschool parents. And so we're not slaves to the curriculum. I use curriculum as it serves me. And so I will pick up a book. We have an Evan Moore book, which I swore I would never do workbooks, right? But then you get to a point and you're like, I just need them to know where to put the comma, yeah, I really love Evan Moore. I resisted for a long time and then I gave in and now I'm like, why did I wait so long? They're amazing. But I have an Evan Moore book that I use for my second going into third grader. She doesn't do every page. She doesn't do it every day. I use it to supplement the stuff that I think she needs to work on. We'll add in other things. I use Schoolhouse Rock videos like they're going out of style, especially for the parts of speech, the verbs and nouns. We watch them over and over again, and lots of Mad Libs to help identify those parts of speech. But there's a time when that curriculum is really helpful. So I think be open to using curriculum at any, whenever you feel it's good for you. Right now I'm using for my youngest, it's a preschool curriculum, but also too, this is my other like quick tip for curriculum. Grade levels mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing. They are arbitrary titles that people slapped on. They're a marketing tool and I don't want to say they mean nothing, but they don't mean the same thing. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. They don't mean the same thing. Your level K in one curriculum is going to be at a different level and might teach different things than level K at another curriculum. So I think be aware of what the grade levels are, maybe more or less. You can kind of know where you fit in, but don't. A lot of new homeschoolers will go into like, oh no, my kid doesn't know this, and it's in the 3rd grade book. Does that mean we're behind? No, it just means that that's what that curriculum publisher decided to put in the 3rd grade book. That doesn't mean that's what everybody is using, for all 3rd grade books at the moment. So does anyone have any questions about this? Is there a way that you look for your curriculum or kind of plan that out that's maybe a little different or like a good help? Let me see if I have any questions. Can you hear that? Welcome to Mexico, where people play live music in the street at any time of day. But that's okay. I'm done with mine. I can pass it over to you.
Jen said, what are some resources for choosing curriculum? Like Stephanie said, I love watching YouTube videos of people reviewing curriculum. It helps because you get to see inside of it and you get to hear them talk about like why they like it, why they don't. And like Stephanie said, that helps you, even if it's something that they don't like, but you're like, oh, but I really like that it's open and go. Then it just gives you, some insight into what the curriculum is actually like, often more than what you're going to find on companies' websites, which is nice. So I would just start with YouTube, looking up, Sunlight, Master Books, My Father's World, all the different kinds of curriculums that are out there. Okay, we are moving on. Oh, Stephanie has something to say.
Sorry, I have one more thing. Because I mentioned that I use it 2 ways, and then I didn't tell you what the second way was. So the second way that I use this sheet is when I finally do decide what I want for each child, then instead of having a curriculum sheet per subject that like I do my kind of research on, I do a curriculum sheet per child, and where I kind of put my final picks for everybody. And so here you can see I have math, language arts, and then I have apps and extras. So like stuff that I want them to be kind of working on that doesn't really fit a curriculum space. Like, we're going to be doing typing this year, Typetastic. I have them do reading eggs and math seeds. But then what I like to do is for the curriculum that I chose, so let's see, I put the good and the beautiful level 3. Like I was saying, levels a lot of times are arbitrary. So it's important to me to write in exactly what it is that curriculum covers in that level. So I'll write, for good and the beautiful level 3, I took a look at the table of contents. Obviously, I'm not going to copy the whole thing, but some big ones are multiplication, equivalent fractions, place value to 1 million. Those are the things that I'm like, okay, this is kind of what we're going to be working on right now. Same with language arts. And notice that I only put units 1 and 2. We're doing this curriculum that's really expansive. It's comprehensive, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. It's very comprehensive. So we're not going to be doing the whole book. We're just going to be focusing on the first 2 units and maybe not doing it every day. And I kind of wrote down what she covers. She covers nouns, pronouns. She gets into diagramming, and this is for a 3rd grader. So I like to have this handy. That way I've already kind of looked at it and I kind of already know as I'm going along, and I'm like, are we going to cover that? I can look back to this and be like, oh yeah, that's right. We do cover that this year. And that helps me to like previous years of this will help me as I'm looking at my next year. Like, did we cover this already? I don't know. Let me double check. So, okay, now I'm really done. Sorry about that.
No, I love that. I do the same thing, and we have in the homeschool planner, we have all 6, everything's color coded in the homeschool planner. So you can choose a color for your kid and then print out each of the kid specific printables in that color. So like I have one pink curriculum sheet and one blue curriculum sheet in my planner, one for Nathan, one for Emily. All right, monthly planning. Stephanie, there's a good English curriculum question in the chat if you want to type back to that. All right, monthly planning. So we're onto this sheet right here. And then inside our planner, we're going to look at our monthly overview calendar and a couple of pages that are like this. What's happening each month? So what I always start with is jotting down like regular events and appointments and things that really do affect our homeschool day. You don't have to write down maybe all of your work stuff or anything like that. But like if you have a family member coming to visit and stay with you, then maybe you want to block that week out. If you want to write down the holidays, you want to write down any trips you're taking or even field trips or like activities, your kids' extracurriculars, especially if they sometimes like happen during the school day or when you guys do your school time. Okay, so write down all of the important things right onto this calendar, because once you do, then you can look at that calendar at a glance and very quickly know how busy or how open that week is, or sorry, that month is. So just having that out there, maybe not writing every single thing that's on your regular planner, right? But filtering it through what affects our homeschool time together, what affects our month as far as education, academics, creative interests, that kind of thing. And then we're going to make our plans for the month. Now, my July is not very full because we're not actually starting school until August. But at the beginning of each month, these are, we have these pages that come right after the calendar that go before your weekly planning to help you really intentionally think through the month ahead. And so on these pages, we have spaces for you to write out possibly your theme for the month, especially if you're teaching littles. You might have an apples theme in September or a pumpkins theme in October, things like that. But for our family, I kind of just use the theme as our focus for the month. What are we really focusing on as a family? So it might be memory work. It might be getting our morning routine down. Like, what is the thing that we're actually working on that month? What is our memory work for the month? We do classical conversations, like I mentioned. And so we have quite a bit of memory work. And then we also incorporate Bible verses into that. So I write those things down. I don't write all of the CC memory work down, but I will write like CC weeks 1 to 3. That's what we're doing in July or August or whatever. We write down any trips that are happening, any projects that we want to work on as a family, or projects that I want to work on as far as homeschooling goes. What is happening in our community. So any co-ops we belong to, or local events in our city, in neighboring cities, things that we want to really just make sure that we either attend or pay attention to throughout that month. I have a space to write down fun stuff, because I'll be very honest, like I'm a go, get it done kind of person. And it's often hard for me to like remember to schedule in a fun activity or rest or the important things. And then I have a space to write out our goals for the month, both my goal for the month and the ones for the kids. Maybe we focus on one of those subject goals that they wanted to work on back in our goal planning section. Then my two favorite sections here that are so helpful for me are to print and supplies and prep. And especially because we do classical conversations and I'm a CC tutor, I will have a significant amount of things to do in both of these sections every month. So even in July, I'm trying to get ahead. So I want to print out all of my CC resources for the year. I need to print out the Good and the Beautiful math. We do Good and the Beautiful for math. We're halfway through the book and I still need to print units 3 and 4 to start in the fall. And then I have a coloring book that for each kid that goes along with our cycle 2 in classical conversations. And then I need to prep all of those things as well. Then over here on the side, this is a section to write out the books that we're going to be reading. And I am really excited to use this space this year since we're going to be using living books for our history, science, mostly history, science, and geography. So I'm going to list out the books that I need to order from the library and be able, and here I'll probably list them out like a couple weeks before July starts so that I can request them and then get them going. But this is something as I'm planning out our year, like I can go to whatever month I know we're going to read that book in and write it down so that I can very easily have my list of books to request from the library ahead of time and make sure that we have what we need as the month starts. So this is really this overview of what we want to make happen this month. So I always say start with your calendar and end with your calendar. And so we started by putting in all of our like basic stuff, right? But then we want to take these things, especially like the community activities, the fun, the trips, the projects, and actually write them onto the monthly calendar so that you have everything that is time sensitive or date sensitive in one place and are able to very easily reference it for yourself. Then at the end of the month, this is the thing that I will often skip over, but when I don't, when I remember to sit down and do it, it makes such a difference in my planning and my like future, looking to the future, figuring out what we need to fix. And so in the homeschool planner, we have this section called at the very end of the month called Look Back at whatever the month is. So for this one, it's July. And it just asks you a few simple, quick, important reflection questions so that you are able to kind of look and figure out, okay, well, let's just go into the questions. What went well? What went well this month? What didn't work very well this month? Write down your notes for those things. What are some things that we accomplished as a family? What are the things that I need to move from this month to the next month? What did we not get to that we need to move over to the next month? And then I have a section for milestones that my kids hit that month. This was a little bit more active when my kids were smaller, when we were like, oh, they memorized their, addition facts, or they lost a tooth, or whatever the thing might be. So milestones now at 3rd and 6th grade are a little farther between, or I have to like make stuff up, that is like, oh, yay, you finished a book. Good job. But the next page, I ask my kids and I write down my own thoughts for. So I ask my kids, what's your favorite thing that you learned this month? And what was your favorite memory from this month? And this is just a fun way to remember, what are the good things, especially on those really hard days. You can look back at these and think, oh yeah, okay, we're doing something, we're making memories, we're building relationships together. This is what it's all about. So that is really our like structure for monthly planning. I always do the whole monthly plan first, obviously not the look back in July, but the overview for monthly planning first. And then I get into my weekly planning, and that's going to be our last section for the day. Stephanie is going to talk about that. Let me just look and see if there are any questions real quick for this. Organizing books ahead of the month. Yes, I'm always last minute and it's stressful. I'm really trying hard to get that done ahead of time too, Jen. Absolutely. If you guys want to see, I'll show you the spreadsheet that I'm putting together for like my living books for the whole year. I can show you that at the end. Let me know in the chat if you want to see it. If you don't, that's totally fine. But I'll save that for the end. Karen says, how are people planning for their high school kids? We have struggled with planning and implementation. I don't have high school kids yet. And maybe Stephanie can speak to this, but I know she doesn't have high school kids yet either. I do follow a few people on Instagram. And the one person that I've seen talk about homeschool planning is Ashley from Grit and Grace. Grace and Grit. It's one of those two. I think it's Grit and Grace. Which one is it, Stephanie? You can type it in. But she talks about homeschool planning for high school. She has a high schooler, and she's pretty organized, and I have found her stuff to be helpful in the past too. Okay, yes to the spreadsheet. Okay, great. All right, now we're going to cover weekly planning, and I'll turn that over to Stephanie.
Okay, so I just wanted to touch the high school thing. Some people are already like talking about it in the comments, which is great. Like, I love it when y'all help each other. That's awesome. But yes, I would say as far as people to look at, Pam Barnhill talks about planning high school. She has all high schoolers now, I'm pretty sure, high school and junior hires. Misty Winkler also talks about that. So Simply Convivial, I believe, is her website. Trying to think, Sarah McKenzie, I believe, touches on it a little bit. And if you guys want some encouragement and just want to know that what you're doing is like, okay, and you're going to make it and the kids are all right. She just, in her last episode of her podcast, had her 20-year-old daughter, who's just in her second year of college, come on and talk about her homeschool experience. And we had a comment earlier about someone who had a baby and they're only on lesson 3 of the math book. She talks about how she had newborn twins and a 1-year-old, and I mean, she had like all these crazy things, and her 12-year-old basically did no school for 6th grade. And she talks about how it was okay, you know, like she made it. And her daughter talks about it from her perspective, and it made me ugly cry. It was really great. So really good for some encouragement on that front. And yeah, right, it was so good. Okay, so getting into weekly planning. So I'm going to show 2 ways that I have planned for my week. One is kind of the more traditional way that you plan a week. And then the second is what I call the do the next correct indicated thing way of planning. And we'll get into when you might want to do that and what that looks like. So the first thing to look at is your weekly, the podcast name is Read Aloud Rebuttal. Sorry, I'm not ADHD. I don't stop talking in the middle of a sentence. Anyway, the first thing is that we're going to look at is our weekly prep page. So there's several of these. There's a couple different options included in the planner with every different layout. And then at the bottom of the printer, or of the bottom of the planner options, there's just some other random ones that you can add together and make your own. So this is one that I really like to use because it's blank. I like having things blank. This is the one that comes with the I believe the 5-day without labels layout. And I really like it because it has this guy down here and these different boxes. You can also get one that has them already labeled for you. So where it has, daily habits, books, outings, supplies, to do. And that, if you don't want to have to think of your own categories, that can be really helpful. But the way that I use mine is usually I use this checkbox for things that are homeschool adjacent. but maybe not exactly curriculum related, but I know that I need a place to write them down and make sure they get done. If I put them in my actual, like my personal planner, but they relate to my kids, it's, I don't know. I don't go back and like check them off, you know? So having it here is really helpful. And so here I have things like prayer. You'll see this in my planner pages too. I put this at the top of like all of my list of things to do is prayer because I feel like it's important and I don't want to forget it. And I often do forget. So I make sure I have that there, check it off. And then things like jump on the trampoline, skate time, stuff that I want us to remember to do to like get our bodies moving throughout the day. You know, even if they're going to do dance later or something else, I just want us to be able to like be moving. We're kind of a bookish family. I know some families don't need that. They're like, they get up and they go for a walk and that's natural. We get up, we like have our book that's like next to us because we fell asleep reading it. And so we just read it some more. Yeah. So we need like reminders to do stuff. And so I like to have that there for me so I can check it off. And then things like handwriting and fact practice. If I'm just using a handwriting book, I often don't note it in my weekly schedule or anything like that, that it's like, I don't necessarily need to write even what lesson we're on because with handwriting, it doesn't really matter. I don't think, or there might be something similar for you where maybe you really do care about what handwriting lesson you're on, but it doesn't really matter what, I don't know, another one you're on. But anything like that where you don't feel like you need to write it down every day, but you just want to make sure it gets done. And then like fact practice. And that's not like a formal curriculum or anything we do. That's just something that I open up in the morning and I throw a couple of math facts at my kids just to get their brains moving and make sure that they are, that we're working on those regularly. So then I'm going to move into the weekly spread and how I use my weekly spread. Now, this is the 2-page. We also have a weekly spread that is all on one page. And it looks kind of something like this when you fill it out. And it really just depends on how much space you need, which one you want to use. Sometimes if we're doing more content heavy, so something that has like a lot of books per se that I'm gonna need to write down and note, I'll use a bigger spread. Right now we're doing a lot of workbooks, just as we're doing like summer maintenance kind of schooling. So this 1 page is sufficient at this point. I'll put in my morning time. Now, notice I don't put pages for every single thing. So I have morning time, Bible, handwriting, memory, and then, I'll just have like the name of a book. For Bible, I'll write in a lot of times what we did for Bible that day. So I'll just, as I'm planning it out, I just write Bible. When we're in it, I will be like, you know what, we listened to daily radio Bible for kids, and I'll note that here. Or, today we read a story from the Jesus Storybook Bible, or whatever it is that we do. I use that a lot for things that we don't really have a set curriculum for, but I still want to remember what we did. And I still want to write it down because I want to make sure that it gets done. Because if I don't write it down and I think, oh, we'll just do it, we won't do it. I won't do it. I won't remember that I need to do it. And then memory. So again, here I just wrote memory so that if we're doing a particular verse, I can write, we worked on, Proverbs 2 this day. And, we're doing that all through the week. Or sometimes we have like poetry memorization. So I'll just write. So for this is taken from an actual week, by the way. I rewrote it because the actual week, by the end of the week, had like a coffee stain and like a sticker. And like one of my kids had drawn something on. Yeah, I was like, let me just do that again. So, but this is taken from an actual week. And that week we memorized the poem Purple Cow by Gillette Burgess. And so I wrote that over here in the notes page. Anything that I want to have to reference kind of quick while we're doing it, I don't want to have to stop and look for it. If it's something short like that, I'll write it in this note section. I'll do my Bible verses there as well. When I'm using this page, if I want to have something like that for quick reference, I'll write it in my weekly prep section. Oh, and I forgot to mention, sorry, what I use these top sections for. I like this as my don't forget homeschool space. I have a don't forget notebook that I keep open next to me while we're homeschooling, because while I'm in the middle of a math lesson is when I'm going to remember that I need to pay the mortgage. So I have that open next to me so I can jot that down. It's out of my brain and I'm moving on. But sometimes things will pop up for homeschool. I don't print out the whole thing at a time. So I'll be like, we're getting to the end of this printed section. I'm just going to make a note here, print out the next couple of pages. Or, my child really liked one of their books. I only maybe bought the first book because I wasn't sure if they're going to like the series, but they did. So I'm going to put, order next. Any marker doesn't have any more ink, buy a black marker, whatever, buy more markers. Anything like that that comes up while you're homeschooling that you need to take care of at some point later, but you don't want to stop what you're doing, I write that in my don't forget spot. I usually write the books that we're going to use the week here. And then I'll usually have some blank space. And then any books that we end up using that I didn't plan on, I'll just fill in. And then also for games, sometimes I'll write some games that we plan on using. So I know that we're going to work on, a certain math concept. And I'm like, oh, you know what? We're going to play, multiplication war this whole week afterwards. And so I'm just going to write that down. And then if we end up doing that, or we end up playing a different game, I'll make a note of that as well. So back to my weekly plan. I do pretty much the same thing for all of my subjects. As I get to, now I only have, this week was for a week that I was only teaching 2 kids. So when I get to things like science and geography, we do that together. And so I will just write, I don't specify which kid is doing what, because we do it all together. And then, for some things, I do write the page number. So like if I know we're reading a specific section of a book and only that section for the week, I'll write the page numbers down. If we're doing a read aloud, so like for here, I wanted to start My Canada on page 47, but then here I just wrote My Canada because that's where I wanted to start. But, we might read more one day and less another day. And then as I read, I'll just write down what pages we wrote so I know where to pick up the next day. Because I don't know about you, but my kids steal bookmarks. I'll put a bookmark in a book and they'll be like, I need a bookmark, and they'll take it out of my book. So I write it down here as well. When I get down to math and language arts, I just write what lessons my kids are on. Now, and I just put like S, lesson 10, L, skill sharpeners. Yeah. So I give little abbreviations for myself. Usually I'll write kind of what it is the first time and then I'll abbreviate it, because as you just saw, I'll forget what my own abbreviations are. So I write it out the first time and then abbreviate it as I go on. And that works well for us. Notice there's nothing on Friday. We use our Friday to catch up on whatever we do here. And if this was like in my actual Friday page, I kind of wrote, we finished this, we did this lesson or whatever. I kind of write whatever it is that we finish up on. And I touched on this a little bit already, but this note space, you can write notes. I've used it as a reflection of the week. So sometimes after the week is done, I've written out my reflection of the week, and maybe some things like, hey, I've noticed that we need to shore up our math facts, or, I asked my children where they could find this book of the Bible and they didn't know. So we need to work on our books of the Bible, stuff like that, things that I noticed as we're schooling that I want to make a note of. Something else I've used it as, and it's really fun when you kind of go back and look at your planner, is we'll just write a little gratitude. I'll make a little spot for each person and I'll ask them what they're thankful for, and they'll give me 3 things and I'll write what I'm thankful for. And I like to do that, especially if we have really academic heavy weeks, because it adds a little bright spot and it reminds us, it kind of helps us go back to like those values, right? And those, like February, all of February has gratitude in it because that's what I need to remember why I'm doing this. Let me see if I have any questions. Let's see. I may or may not have it choose with squirrels structure. Girl, that's me all over. Like, did I not just say that I like forget biota abbreviations? Like, yes, I definitely feel you. And I feel like I have to overschedule. And sometimes, I've come to the point where I do it and I'm okay if I don't get everything done. At first, I felt bad if my week didn't happen the way that I planned it out. Now I just transfer whatever doesn't get done to the next week. And that's the end of it. There's no reason to feel bad about it. I think that I would rather have enough on my schedule than not enough and then not know where to go next. So for me, making sure that I know what's next, what I could do, how many lessons I could cover this week, that's really helpful for me. Let's see. And yeah, I love that. If we need to knock something off, we just draw a line through it. Perfect. So that's one way to use it. And like I said, this is what I use when I have more books. You can also use this one page too, but you'll notice it looks really similar for me where I have prayer. JSB is Jesus Storybook Bible, and I'll go through and write, what story we read. Anything like that. I like to give myself anchors in my schedule. So things that I put that I know I want to remember to do. I don't need to fill in the details. I can fill those in later, but at least they're like posts that I know I need to, okay, here's the signpost. I need to do this thing now. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next way, which is next correct indicated thing planning. So these weekly prep pages could actually just be your whole planner. This was a week that I used it just for that. And I found this as I was going through my planner last night. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So we were doing the basics. I wrote down exactly what needed to be done. Memory verse, Bible verse song, history, math for each kid. I think we were going through the 1-year Bible at that time. And I check it off. These boxes are big enough that if you needed to write, you'll notice in some of these, for my daughter, I wrote blood sugar. My daughter has type 1 diabetes, and sometimes if her blood sugar is too high or too low, school doesn't get done that day. And this is really handy for me because I didn't need to write out a whole big thing, but as I'm looking on this, I'm like, okay, that week was a little rough. Maybe we need to make adjustments in her health plan. Or I'm like, okay, if I'm looking at why are we so behind in math, I can remember, oh, you know what, we had some health struggles and that's why, So I feel like those little things that you can do. Sorry, I did not realize there's a phone here. Someone will answer it. Sorry about that. I can't answer it because it's not my phone. Anyway, hold on. Here. Dale, Ama. ¿Ya lo contas? It's okay. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry. All right, so moving right along. The next thing that we're gonna do is look at how you can use some of the other pages to do your this. For this method sounds easy. Yes, exactly. I mean, really all you need is a checklist, right? To make sure it gets done. And if you want to remember all the great books that you read, you can write those here. You can also write those in the book list in your monthly prep page. Something else that we have a lot of are these, and we have them in every color, like Casey said, these checklist sheets. And I use this for when we're using like a lot of workbook type curriculum. What I do is I draw a little box around the amount of lessons. So here I would write, like I wrote math level 1. There's 120 lessons. And I wrote a box. These are 20 across, by the way, in case you're wondering. So I wrote a box around all the 120 lessons. You could write in all the numbers. I like to write them in as I go to know that I did them. So I do lesson 2. I just write lesson 2. I know that lesson got done. That's the end. And that's all I do. I just know that I did it. That's great for when you're using a lot of workbooks, you can just write one in, for everyone, and then each kid has their own color. Another thing that you could do is use this page that we have. This is also in that kind of bottom part of the planner, on the planner product on your left-hand side as you're going down, where this week's work, and it just has a whole bunch of subjects. You can have one for each kid, or, if you don't have that many subjects for your kids, you can write them all here and just write what you did that week. And that way you can write down what you plan on doing and then check it off as you do it. Or you can, as you're doing the next lesson in each thing, just write what lessons you did. And that can work out really well if you don't want to have a whole big thing. Another thing that's similar, kind of the same idea as this page, but a little more fleshed out, is this yearly overview 4. And so you can use this particular one that has every single day. This lends itself really well to workbooks. You can write, week 1, lesson 1 Monday, lesson 2 Tuesday, as you go forward. I like to write in the corner how many lessons the book has, and that helps me kind of see visually where I am. For content subjects, so like if you're doing, I use this page when we did sunlight, because it has 36 weeks. And so I just write all the lessons out, what they're as they are in the table of contents. And then as we do that lesson, I just write the dates in. And that's it. And then I know we did it. And that's all you got to do. And this type of planning works really well if you're in a stressful season, if you're in a season where you just need school to get done, and maybe sitting down to plan it all out is going to be an obstacle to getting it done. Setting yourself up with something like this where you can just sit down, do it, and check it off will make sure that it gets done. I feel like it'd be difficult for me to plan like this all the time, but I know people that do. I know people that are more academics focused, and this is how they make sure, this is how they keep records also for their state. Sometimes they need to add it into their portfolio. And so they use these to make sure that everything gets done every time. And that can be really helpful. Let's see if I have any questions. There's a lot of grace. Come to audit. Okay, so yes, like Casey said, that really depends on your state. Every state has different rules. If you're a new homeschool mom, the first place I would start is to find out what the homeschool rules are in your state. And I think someone mentioned the HSLDA, HSLDA, that's what it's called. They have exactly what, like they have a whole list of states, and you click on your state and it tells you exactly the accountability that you need in your state. I live in Texas. We're like, you don't even have to tell anyone you're homeschooling. You can pretty much just do what you want. But I do keep records, and I've gotten better at this as I've gone on because we moved. I live in Texas. My residency is in Texas. We came here to Mexico, and nobody homeschools here. I found one other person who homeschools. Very, very rare. And so I don't think we're probably going to stay here permanently, but if I ever feel like we are, and I want to put my kids in any kind of education system here, they need to have some kind of record of something. I need to have something to show someone what level they're on, and so they can keep going. So I like to keep records just in case, because you never know what state you're going to move to that might want something. And I also really like to have them for my own reference. So I know, hey, I did this, especially if you have multiple children as you move along. I think I'll remember, but I never remember. I know I did this one thing with my one kid and it worked really well. What was that? I never remember exactly what it is. So having just some kind of record and going back and looking at my planner pages, I was looking at my planner pages last night. There was a curriculum. I don't know what it is. It was called Spell and Write. I wrote down Spell and Write lesson 1, Spell and Write lesson 2. I don't remember what that was. I'm like, did we do that curriculum? We must not have finished it because I don't remember it. So records are good for that. Does anyone have any other questions? Let's see. Yeah, Canada definitely has different rules. I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Thank you. That was so good, Stephanie. I would just wanted to say too, I use this page for like I'll write out the kids' entire year of math, like Stephanie was saying. There's a page that's similar to this that doesn't have it divided into the days, but I do this and then we just highlight each one when it's done so that like we can see the whole year at a glance. We know exactly where we are on the page, and then I just highlight them or cross them out when we're finished, and then it's done. So we are just going to wrap up. I hope that this has been really helpful for you guys. We will post the replay. You can absolutely always come back and watch it. It's gonna we're just going to put it on our YouTube channel so that it's public, ready for anybody who wants to see it. You are welcome to share it with anyone that you know that's a homeschool mom. I know this was a lot of information. I do. It probably makes gets a little more organized in your head when you have our lesson planner. I'm going to drop the link in the comment or in the chat box right now, but and you know, if people are watching the replay later, I'll put it down below. But our homeschool planner, we will keep it discounted for you guys for another week or so in case you want to grab it. All of the pages that we talked about today are in there, and we have it, it's really customizable, but we also have one where you can just print it beginning to end and be able to kind of hit on all of the topics that we touched on today in order. So I hope that that was helpful. Well, like I said, we'll send out the replay. Thank you guys so much for coming. I don't think that we missed any questions, so I will say goodbye. Have a great, great afternoon. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. I hope that this has given you a little bit of encouragement and inspiration to start your homeschool year maybe a little more organized and with a good focus for where you want the year to go. So Stephanie, thank you so much for teaching so many things. And for everybody else, we will see you guys later. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.